legacy of transparency, we are your trusted partner aiming for fully circular flooring solutions made with renewable and recycled raw materials. Going round, moving forward. Forbo Flooring Systems.
Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Willem Bromanje and I will be your host for this 1-hour session in which we are trying to solve the circular challenge. The presentations you will see will be available after the screening. Solving the circular challenge. How is that done? Let's first talk about the definition for what is the circular economy. What I have here is a paper from the CEN Technical Committee, Working Group 134. And there, as a definition for circular economy, it reads: a circular economy is an economic system aimed at maintaining the value of products, materials and resources for as long as possible by extracting the maximum value from them whilst in use, then recovering and regenerating products and materials at the end of each service life, while minimizing the generation of waste. The circular economy is not having a cup and making it into a basket afterwards. That's okay, that is a start. But not for nothing, the circular economy is about going round, moving forward, which is exactly the theme of our new promotion campaign in Forbo, where we are promoting our use of the circular economy. What is the world today? What is happening in Europe? And what is in particular happening in various markets? I'm joined today by two people. Two key players in the industry when it comes to promoting circularity. They are Jane Gardner from ERFMI, the European Resilient Floor Manufacturers Institute, and Julie Chaminade from Kaléi, who is doing exactly the same for the French market. Not only floor coverings, they also include ceilings, panels, walls, whatever. So big in France. Two very important people when it comes to explaining to us what the circular economy is all about and what we are doing about it actually, and giving an example, in this case in the French market, which in many cases are a front runner when it comes to circularity in particular. I will start this presentation by asking Jane, who now will share the screen with me, from Brussels, where our offices of ERFMI, Forbo, as you might know, is a member of the European Resilient Flooring Manufacturers Institute. As a matter of fact, we're one of the founding members, together with Tarkett and JR Floor and Polyfloor from the UK. We're going strong for 25 years, and we have a clear vision on what the circular economy is all about. The floor is yours, Jane. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Willem. I'm going to start the presentation today by introducing you to the European Resilient Flooring Manufacturers Institute. I will explain who we are, what we do, and then I will have a look at the European policies that are shaping our actions and describe our approach to the circular economy and some of the actions we are undertaking to develop a circular economy for resilient floor coverings. So we are the European Trade Association for the resilient floor covering sector. This covers PVC, rubber, linoleum, cork, as well as other polymeric floor coverings. We have 17 members who together place more than 370 million square meters of flooring on the European market every year. The sectors that are covered, the segments that are covered by our members are shown here. So we have hospitality and leisure, healthcare, residential, transport, industry, retail, and business. These are our members, of whom Forbo is, of course, a founding member, and also a member of our ExCom, with Willem Bromanje being the chair. So this is what we do. We have established a roadmap. There are 4 main areas. first of all, is we are very involved in standardization to ensure that our products meet the highest possible standards. We ensure technical and legal compliance of our members. We track policies across Europe that will affect the flooring industry. We undertake advocacy towards the European Commission and European Parliament to ensure a landscape in Europe in which our members can continue to grow and develop. And by far the most important part of our remit is to look at how to develop a circular economy for floor covering. And our actions are shaped very largely by European policy. And I just wanted to go in a few slides over the main policies that are shaping our action. So the European Green Deal was launched by Ursula von der Leyen in December 2019. It has two main goals. So by 2030, to reduce net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% compared to a 1990 baseline, and by 2050 to achieve total carbon neutrality, whereby, and a circular economy, whereby, as Willem has already described, economic growth is decoupled from resource. And in order to do this, this is a slide that has been compiled by Construction Products Europe. They have developed policies, initiatives, and communications aplenty in the last 3 years. And you can see that all of them are interlinked. So the ones that we are mainly focusing on are Circular Economy Action Plan, the Sustainable Products Initiative, and the Construction Products Regulations. But they are interlinked and affected by nearly all the other policies, initiatives, and communications. So just to name a few, we have the revision of the Construction Products Regulations, which the regulations which specify how you are, or define how you are allowed to place construction products on the market in Europe. And they are looking at introducing environmental aspects into CE marking. In particular, it will be mandatory to include information on greenhouse gas emissions, and basically undertake life cycle assessments in order to place your product on the market in Europe. They have introduced an eco-design for sustainable products regulations, the ESPR. This is the overarching regulation looking at eco-design and sustainability in products, and it will, for construction products, or it will be implemented within the construction products regulations. It's looking at, then we are looking at many minimum recycled content initiatives. The CE marking is foreseeing product passports to be developed. And we are also a signatory of the EU Commission-backed Circular Plastics Alliance. This is an alliance with over 240 signatories, both from industry and institutions and national and public authorities. And the target is to achieve 10 million tons of recycled plastics used in new products placed on the market in Europe by 2025. And then there are many national policies, particularly looking at extended producer responsibility. The clear front runner here is France, and Julie will explain in more detail about how this is being launched in France. So, developing a circular economy for resilient floor coverings. The first thing is that we have a clear vision of where we want to go. We want to develop our industry or continue to develop it, to contribute to the preservation of our planet, to develop circular products with a reduced environmental footprint. We are doing this by trialing collection schemes across Europe. We are undertaking trials and research on recycling technologies. We're taking the lead really on standardization with regard to circular economy. We want to become leaders in the circular economy for floor coverings and beyond, and be seen as a blueprint. And we are very aware that we have to engage with the entire supply chain across the life cycle of the flooring in order to achieve these goals. So that's some of the practical steps we have undertaken. We have developed a dedicated circular economy working group within ERFMI. We are developing standards for the circular economy, and we have we are investigating technology options for sorting of resilient flooring waste, for extracting legacy materials, and for recycling. I will mention legacy materials a few times, so I should probably say that one of our main challenges when it comes to recycling post-consumer flooring is that our flooring coverings are extremely resilient and long-lasting, which is a positive for sustainability. However, this positive has a drawback that when the flooring is 20 years old, 20 years ago, it was probably used making chemicals that are made using chemicals that are no longer allowed to be used in new products placed on the market today. This is why we are spending a lot of time and focusing on trying to sort legacy materials out of the waste stream and trying to extract legacy materials from post-consumer floor coverings. Standardization is really very, very important because it helps us to unify terminology and interfaces. It helps us provide better communication across the supply chain with different market actors. And it also helps us greatly in order to develop a common understanding, not only in Europe, but also globally, especially if we could roll these standards out, for example, within the International Standardization Organization, ISO. So at the moment, the CENTI C134 is working on terms and definitions. We're looking at guidelines for design for recycling, which is a very important topic. And we're looking at developing a standard for product passports to understand what information needs to be placed in the product passport for it to be useful to the user of the flooring. So the technology options we are developing are, first of all, co-funded by Vinyl Plus, the PVC industry commitment to sustainability. And there we are looking at recycling technologies, as I've mentioned before, but also collections. We are currently looking at working on a collection scheme from a distributor in Germany. And we are working with the Dutch Association for Flooring Contractors, working with their members to collect resilient floor coverings from the waste resilient floor coverings from the Dutch market. I think it's very important because the way you collect material has a huge impact on the way it can be handled at end of life. And so we are very keen to try different ways of collecting flooring to assess what the optimal way is. And it could easily vary by country in order to achieve, to recover the resources and so that they can be used in a second life. We are working on EU-funded Horizon 2020 project, circular flooring. And as part of the European Floor Coverings Association, we are part of CISOFLOW project, Circular Sustainable Floor Coverings. All our members have internal reprocessing and recycling. They have zero waste factories. Forbo is definitely one of the front runners here. They have collection programs for installation waste and some also for post-consumer material. And there is a industry-owned recycling production plant in Germany, which has been operating for over 20 years, called AGPR. And in 2021, the industry collected, ERFMI members recycled around 120,000 tons of PVC floor covering. But there's no doubt that we can be doing more, particularly when it comes to post-consumer flooring. So we were very lucky we're very happy to be part of a consortium working on a project called Circular Flooring Project. It is a 4-year project. It's managed by a German institute called the Fraunhofer Institute, and it has a consortium of 11 members from across the flooring supply chain, and there are 7, we call them linked third parties, the 7 members of ERFMI who are going to trial the flooring recycled in new products, and Forbo again is one of them. So the idea here is to take PVC floor coverings to separate the legacy materials, which are in this case mainly plasticizers, from the pure PVC using a dissolution process called creosote. The PVC will then be used in new flooring production, and the resid, so the plasticizers that have been extracted are being turned into REACH compliant plasticizers via a chemical process of hydrogenation. And the idea is that we will then be able to replasticize the PVC with this newly developed plasticizer and use it in new flooring. It's quite a complicated slide, but you will be able to see the slide. You will have the slide pack available. And then we are part of CISOFLOW, which is completely overarching, looking at all floor coverings, so carpet, laminate, multi-layer floor coverings, and resilient floor coverings. And the idea is to set up a systemic framework for circular and sustainable flooring coverings to minimize the total environmental impact of the entire flooring sector and to shift from a linear to a circular model. There are 19 members of this party across Europe, and you can see that EU FCA is one of them. And the idea is that we are looking at taking a holistic approach, looking at the circularity of floor coverings. We're also looking at how to identify what is in the floor coverings at end of life. So here it's going further than developing what has to go into a product passport, but it's actually looking at how to attach the information to the actual product. There are 6 pilot schemes. We are looking at identification of flooring waste, manufacturing of circular flooring products, and also separating different layers of flooring. I'm not going to go into great detail here because you will see the slide, but the idea is to look at a holistic approach for the entire flooring sector. So just to conclude, ERFMI and its members, we're taking a strategic approach to the development of the circular economy. Very important for our industry, and our aim is to be one of the leaders in the circular economy and the leader in the circular economy in the flooring sector. We recognize that we need to collaborate with other actors in the supply chain in order to achieve this. So we are looking to work with waste management companies, recyclers, and raw material suppliers, and just to work together to become more circular. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and please see my email address on this slide if you would like any further information.
Thank you very much for giving this very clear insight, a very comprehensive presentation of everything that is happening on a European scale. I was struck by one thing on one of your slides which concerns the EU Green Deal. It's not a question, but it's something that I thought, I didn't realize this, but it is actually true. You said that Ursula von der Leyen said the circular economy, economic growth is decoupled from resource. That's of course very interesting, that you do not need to require new resources, new raw material in order to grow. That if you apply the rules of the circular economy, you will retrieve your raw material and you will be able to grow, partly of course because there will be some waste and you will need some new material, but you will be able to grow by reusing your original raw materials. That I thought was a great insight. Now, my question is, can you give an example, or can you say something about, for instance, the circular flooring project? How far are we? Because I can imagine people are thinking, yes, this is a big European organization. They get money from Europe. They will have consultants, no doubt. They will talk and have papers and have good ideas. But what actually has been done in the circular flooring project until now?
So we're very practical. We have so far, they have already trialed the dissolution of the PVC from the legacy materials, which has been very successful. And they are currently in the process of building a pilot plant in order to process several tons of flooring, which will then be sent to the manufacturers, who will have a look at how it could be incorporated in their recipes or in their products, or even whether a new product could be designed in which this flooring could be used. So the pilot plant is currently being built, and we hope that it will be finished by the end of the year. And then we will start trials in large-scale trials in January. We have been held up slightly building the pilot plant due to COVID, but it's definitely progressing very well, and it has a lot of promise in that way.
Yeah. I know that we have developed this process together with the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, as well as the University of Athens. And circular flooring in the end will give us, well, a little bit simplified. It will take old floor covering to go in, and it will give us pure PVC, pure plasticizer, filler, and legacy materials. We don't want those. The others we can use.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
in
good.
a nutshell.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good. Let's dive into the topic a little bit deeper now. I would like to introduce our second guest, which is Julie Chaminade, who is the managing director of Kaléi. I now also know that how to pronounce Kaléi. In the industry, we talk about Kaléi, 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 Kaléi. It is founded over 100 years ago. Julie will talk about that. What is interesting about the example that we have in France, that there we have the Green Deal, which in effect will become legislation for all of us. All of our governments will implement laws. One is quicker, one is more specific, one is more general, one focus on one topic, one on the other. In France, they've taken very much a holistic approach, taking the extended producer's responsibility, the producer being responsible for the product in its conception right through the end. And there France has taken a huge step. And Julie is going to talk to us to explain us what is happening in France today.
So let's talk about Kaléi in a few words. We are, as you said before, an association representing many more markets than the flooring coverings, wall coverings, panels, stretched ceilings, architectural textiles, roofing membranes, everything related with soft PVC, I would say. We were founded 100 years ago and represent European manufacturers active on the French market. Just to give an idea of what the market for flooring is in France, it's over 60 million square meters per year. Over 20 members, of which Forbo is founding members and active for a very long time, and also member of our executive committee as it is in ERFMI. So what about the circular economy in France, and why talking about France at this point? Because I really believe that France is a champion in Europe in this matter. It was the very first one to publish a law which is called AGEC, and which title already mentioned the circular economy as an objective. It was published 2 years ago now in February 2020 and covers more than 100 articles, which led to exactly around the same number of decrees, some of them even to be implemented few months after. The whole philosophy behind this law is to say that circular economy is a global responsibility for manufacturers, of course, but also for end users, and at every step along the production process, but also along the value chain, for all markets and all types of products. Now, if we look and dip into this law and look at the major objectives impacting the flooring covering industry, there are 6 I could pick. One is to fight against product wastage. A second one is to reduce and recycle waste from the building sector. A third one is to promote circular economy via public demand. A fourth one is to enable the consumer to make an informed decision. The fifth one is to reduce the use of plastic single-use packaging. And the 6th one is producer responsibility. And somehow all of these have something to do with circularity and prevention of waste. If we look at the concrete requirements that we can find in different decrees related to these objectives, I listed them from their application date. Since 2 years, it's compulsory in France waste sorting at building, demolition, and industry level. There is also a second decree which is very interesting, even though it's not yet something real for construction products, but it's a minimum percentage of public purchases to be done with articles presenting recycled content or possibility of be reused. In some of the categories mentioned in this decree, it goes to 40% of the purchases, for instance. Let's say it's more for furniture, clothing, paper, and this kind of product at the moment. In 2022, became compulsory waste audits prior to renovation and demolition. This will help circularity because you know where waste is and what needs to be done. Next January, 3 major tools will come into force. One I will just detail a bit more further later on. The European Product Responsibility Scheme for construction products. But I wanted to mention as well 2 other tools. Labeling on endocrine disruptors will be compulsory, as well as labeling on environmental impacts. This kind of information can also have some impacts on recyclability and of course, therefore, circularity. And in 2 years' time, we are expecting 2 more important decrees to enter into force. A European Product Responsibility Scheme for industrial and commercial packaging. And for every industrial, there is use of packaging to protect their products and allow transport. So every industrial will have to pay this new tax. And there is also a requirement to reduce for every industrial the use of single-use packaging by 20 compared to 2018. With the aim that in 2040, There shall not be any more single-use packaging in France, whatever sector. Now, if we come to the French Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme for construction product as such, which is of course something that the flooring industry is facing at the moment. Who is concerned and what is the philosophy? Really, the idea here is to say, if you produce an article which will generate waste, then you have to pay for the management of this waste. But of course, we can ask ourselves, who are the producers then? Only the manufacturers? No. In the French law, it is really clear that when you are a manufacturer with the French legal entity, yes, you need to pay. But if you are a distributor with your own brands, you're also concerned and have to pay your duty. And if you import directly from abroad, well, then you distributor, installer, or building owners have to pay also your duty to this EPR scheme. If the manufacturers selling from abroad want to pay instead of their customers, they will have the possibility to do it, but it's on a voluntary basis. The list of concerned products has been detailed by the state because it's not that easy. Sometimes you have some products sold in different markets. 3 eco-organisms or product responsibility organisms will be dealing with the flooring products waste. They have been accredited within the last 2 weeks by the French state, and their name are Valobat, Valdelia, and Ecomobilier, which turned to be now Ecomaison. Interestingly, the very first one, Valobat, has been created from scratch and only for this EPR scheme dealing with construction products, and its funding members are industrial, among which Forbo, committed to give a reality to this EPR scheme. The 2 other ones, Valdelia and Ecomobilier, were eco-organisms already existing for the furniture take-back, which decided to open and enlarge their business to the construction product. These 3 eco-organisms will or have to publish tariffs. Each of them, they choose the tariffs they want to apply. The idea is most of the time that the amount to pay by the producer will depend on its annual turnover. And these tariffs will be updated each year because these organizations are non-profit organizations and they establish the tariffs based on the cost of collection, recycling, and volumes they have. Another idea which is very interesting in this French legislation is the bonus-malus system. Is the way to incite the industry to put on the market the best product for circularity, i.e., for instance, with none or the least dangerous substances possible, with the highest level of renewable resources. So these are 2 parameters that will be taken into account since next year. And in a year time, more parameters will be taken into consideration: recyclability, reuse, and recycle content. How will it work? There will be collection points all over France. Every 20 kilometers and sometimes 10 kilometers, you will find a collection point from one of the 3 networks, Valdelia, Valobat, or Ecomaison we mentioned before. On every of these collection points, the law says 7 containers for construction products will need to be available for installers, and 1 for plastics. And when I say 1 for plastics, it's all plastics mixed. So there is currently negotiation from our association with some of the PRO eco-organisms, so that we have specific containers for PVC flooring waste. Because as I said, was said by Jane, it's very important to have the best sorting at a very early stage. When installers will come to these collection points, it will be free of charge. And these collection points will be whether run by professional waste management companies or by public authorities. Another idea is that collection will be possible also at construction sites for large volumes. It will start a year after, because it's really a lot of work to put in place all these networks. And also with the idea that it will be less expensive for installers than it is today. The legislator wanted also to implement another option, i.e. that distributors could become collection points. And this is an obligation when they have premises over 4,000 square meters to take free of charge waste from their customers or anyone coming back with waste corresponding to the product they sell. Of course, they have this possibility not to have the 7 containers, but only the one corresponding to the product they sell. So as you see in resume, the idea of the French EPR scheme is really to put in place a large-scale management of waste and not to have pilot schemes here and there, one parallel to the other. To organize the waste collection, but also partnerships with recyclers. I didn't deep into that because we don't really have time, but that's the idea. And the ambition in France is to deal with 40 million tons of building and construction waste. It means that they expect to collect via what the producers will pay 2.5 million euros only for the collection and recycling of construction waste. It's the highest EPR scheme in France ever, and even 3 times higher than the one for packaging, which is from ever the most important in France. So we could ask ourselves, well, what now that we know the legislation, what else can be done to solve the challenge of circularity and prevention of waste? I think what is doing ERFMI at the moment is really what is to be done. We need absolutely to develop adequate sorting equipment to help the sorting of mixed plastic containers, and also to develop large-scale dedicating recycling plants, because of course the amount of waste that is going to be collected will become higher and higher, because free of charge installers will have the opportunity to do something about it and feel committed. The ambition we share with ERFMI is flooring back to flooring. Integrating recycling requirements into product design and installation is something that the manufacturers are doing, and Forbo is doing very well and really helps circularity. We do promote this idea. It's also important to think about new steps and new field of legislation that are coming. At least in France, there is a lot of work on building modularity and reuse of products, which can also be a way of answering circularity. A move to digitalization is also something that is important at the level of the industry and also the associations. Implement circularity, and just say facilitate education on circularity along the chain. Very important. Now, internet developments influence France. Yes, all goals are common. We could see from the first slide of Jane. limit climate change impacts, circularity. Speed and tools might be slightly different, but at the end, it's the European legislation that will be imposed in France. But we hope that with the success of our tools, we will give the right direction to what Europe will do. And thank you, ERFMI, for what you do. Thank you, Forbo, and for what you're doing as well, because I think really the flooring industry is on the way to circularity.
This is a very impressive presentation of what is actually happening in France today. I believe if I see all the slides and all the things that have been organized, there's been an enormous amount of work in preparing this and getting this done. It's a huge geographical country. I believe it is the largest geographical country in Europe. And then to have collection points every 20, sometimes every 10 kilometers, I think is a great achievement. You said something about the tariffs. The eco-organisms, which are the three parties who are organizing everything, they of course require money. That is what you call the tariff, isn't it?
Exactly.
Have they been announced yet?
Well, that's a good question, because they have been announced today. So a very bravo for the
Very
date
good.
of your
So even there you are,
webinar.
on
Well,
schedule.
it's really very well done, really on the schedule. It has been announced today, and the three eco-organisms are really on the same trend. They speak about 0.02 or 3 cents per ton. So of course you have to transform that into square meters when you talk about flooring. But if you take a floor covering, which is 2.5 kilos, which is or 3 kilos, which is
average, yes.
Average, it means 10 cents.
Oh, that is quite a lot. I would not say better than expected, but it is certainly helping the scheme. It is not a major contribution that you have to make per square meter as a manufacturer. So I think that's
I would say that's a start, because as I said before, these organizations are non-profit organizations. They look at the balance in between the volume they think they will collect and the recycling cost. Because we are at the start, they believe they will start with, they don't give the exact indication, but they believe they will start with little.
Yes.
And by time, education of the installers will be higher, and they will bring more. Volumes will be higher. And therefore, maybe the tariff will increase. But that's a start. It's already a lot of education to customers to explain about this new information and new price.
And then if you are using more eco-friendly floor covering material, then you have a bonus. So there is this bonus malus system as well, which I like very much. Let's have Jane in the picture as well and answer some questions from the audience. I would like to start with one still question from you, Julie. You said in your presentation a couple of times, the law says blah, blah, blah. So how important is the role of the French legislation, the French government in this scheme?
They impose everything.
They do.
They believe they impose the tools. They believe there is an objective, but they believe they have also the solution. And France is really a champion in EPR schemes. We are in this AGEC law I mentioned. There are 11 schemes to be developed, and from the history we have 30 EPR schemes. So the French state is a real believer on the success, a large-scale management of waste paid by the producer of the products can be.
Do you, Jane, do you believe that in other countries in Europe a similar process will occur, that the Green Deal will become legislation?
I do believe that it will occur. There have been discussions in other countries I think it's France is the only one that has really implemented it first, but I think we can look to France as to how it's done and learn from them. But yes, I think it will come in other countries. I know that in the Netherlands they're looking specifically at flooring there's talk of it in Germany and all over Europe as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was also going to make that remark between, let's say, what's happening in the Netherlands and in France. And what I see happening in Netherlands is what is lacking is this government urge and this government legislative power that they can have to simply say, guys, you have to make it happen because otherwise you're going to pay. We have great schemes, but we have a government that's running a little bit behind. I'm talking about my own country here. There is a question from the audience, because the audience is free to use the chat, and I will see your questions and then I will pose them to either Jane or Julie, whoever is most fit to answer the question. Mr. Steve Stein is saying, that's for you, Jane, given the wide use of ERFMI member products in the US, and that's also true for Australia, for instance, does ERFMI interact with our counterparts in the US and Australia?
Yes, indeed. It's very interesting you should say that, but we have set up a small forum between the three managing directors. We have met twice so far. We're meeting on a 6-weekly basis to exchange on the work we're doing with RFCI and ARFA in America and ARFA in Australia. In Australia, they are looking at voluntary producer responsibility, but they have been given $1 million Australian dollars and 12 months to set up or to plan a voluntary producer responsibility take-back scheme. And if that doesn't work, then it will be imposed upon. So in Australia, they've got a slightly different model. And in America, I don't think the government is discussing producer responsibility yet. But no, we are in touch, and because we realize it's a global market and all our members sell globally. So we realize it's very important to speak to the other parts of the world. I think
in particular, the Australian example is very interesting because here in Europe, we have sort of a natural reaction. Can we not send it back to the factory? Can they not deal with it? And of course, if you are in Australia and you're dealing with products that are manufactured in Europe, sending it back to the factory is not really feasible. I mean, the distance, the amount of product, so you would have to think of a local solution, which I think is interesting. Now, one of the European countries that is a little bit further than other markets is Italy. When it comes to defining the amount of recycled content in floor covering product that is used in public buildings. There should be a certain amount of recycled content. I do not know exactly if it is 15 or 20%, but something like that. For Julie, is there something like that in France as well, that the government imposes a level of recycled content?
No, not yet.
Not
yet. No, not yet. But it imposes in the legislation which refers to the information to be given on environmental impacts, it will impose for a long list of categories to mention the recycled content on every article. It's not yet to be implemented by construction product, probably in 2 or 3 or 5 years from now. But for packaging, furniture, and many other sectors, there is this obligation to mention always a recycled content. Okay, so there are a lot of discussion going on what recycled content mean.
Yes, just like the definition we had at the beginning. Yeah, just like we were discussing at the beginning what the circular economy actually is. Also recycled content you can talk about. Is it clean waste that you are retrieving when you install a floor? Is it, like Jane was talking about, old post-consumer floors that have been laying there for 30 years or more that you need to take back and you don't know what is exactly in it, you don't know who the producer is. So a very complicated discussion. When it comes to PVC recycling, Jane, would you consider, let's say, the dissolution project? circular flooring, CC flow, as upcycling of PVC. There's this idea about upcycling, downcycling, and then we'll degrade. But this dissolution project, would that be a form of upcycling?
Definitely, because you are basically using PVC back into the product, not quite in its raw form, because it would still contain some filler material. But yes, because you can use it back into flooring, it would definitely be upcycling as such.
Yeah, because that also is interesting for the situation in France we have today. Julie, we have this scheme whereby the manufacturers we know now are going to pay anything between, let's say, 10 and 20 cents per square meter for their floor covering. So that's up to us to actually do that as a manufacturer. But when the waste is being recycled, will there be a value at the end that the waste can be sold to somebody and that a manufacturer can get something back for his waste?
Well, it will become usual business in between the recycler and the industrial. But of course, it has a value because the more the industrial will put recycled content high in its product, the best reduction of its eco contribution it will get. So of course there will be a need, an absolutely need to have some recycled material available for the flooring industry, of course. So all the work which is done at the moment by ERFMI is of absolutely high value and need to be speed up as much as it is possible.
Yes, I hope that everybody who is listening from within countries in Europe actually are quite excited about seeing what has happened in France and what has been organized. And also that you find some answers as to what you should be doing, what you should be looking at, how you should organize such a scheme. Companies like Vallobat are, of course, crucial to this whole scheme, I can imagine, Julie.
They are, this one very specifically because it is composed by the industry itself. So it has all the knowledge of the products, of all the needs, and having a collection schemes without looking at the recycling option and what are the needs of the industrial at the end of the way to make it circular is nonsense. So that's the value of Vallobat, to get this expertise from its funded members.
And there you also said the members are working together. Jane, do you also see that as a next step within the European organizations, that if you want to make this happen, there should be a collaboration with someone like Vallobat, a third party, but also between companies?
100%. I believe that either it has to be done by a third party and then backed by manufacturers, as it is the case in Vallobat, although that's obviously legally binding, but that's one way to operate. Or there has to be some kind of joint some kind of cooperation to make this happen. But it wouldn't be a first in our industry. It's been done in the past, and so I'm hopeful that we might be able to set something similar up for the flooring industry.
I can add here that within Vallobat and the other eco-organisms, there are some funds for research and development projects. So it's the perfect idea to combine the efforts made by ERFMI and the industry with the objectives of the eco-organisms in France to come to solutions adequate for our sector.
And just to be clear for both of you, we are talking about in the case of ERFMI, resilient floor covering, so that includes PVC, where we talk a lot about, of course, but there's also rubber, and there is linoleum, there is non-PVC flooring, there's cork flooring, which all belong to our category. We all take that as one group of products. Is that true, Jane?
That's what we're looking at in our collection scheme in the Netherlands, and we will look at how we can sort that, if possible, automatically into the different categories.
Yeah, because interesting enough, of course, that's also for the audience, you might be thinking that collection schemes are difficult to set up, but if you look at what has happened in, let's say, the car industry with all the electric batteries, they have set up a scheme where it doesn't really matter whether you recycle a battery out of a Mercedes or out of a Tesla or out of a BMW or a Volkswagen or a Peugeot. They're all collected as batteries and treated as batteries, or even closer to home, your fridge, your washing machine, whenever you want to have a new one, a new television. They are not saying, I only take Bosch washing machines, or I only take Miele washing machines, I don't want the Bosch. Everything that you hand in is being treated without being the difference of the brand that is involved. And that also, for me, as I see it, is the future within the flooring industry. Julie, as a final remark, I have a short story we talked about a little bit before we started the webinar. I was in France in the weekend, in the Morvan, helping friends with cutting down some trees around a little house that they have had for 20 years. And we were talking about this webinar, because I said I had to go back on Monday and to be here. We were talking about this webinar, and then my friend said, yeah, it's actually funny, because 20 years ago, there was a dump here in the woods, and I could just put my litter, and all kinds of litter, building material and stuff like that, I just could put it on that dump, but there was a dump for the whole village. Now, that is no longer there. I'm now driving, indeed, 10 kilometers to a formal déchetterie, so a formal place where I need to register what I dump or what I give back, and then it's being treated. So it's actually happening.
It's exactly one of the political reasons why the French government went so fast on putting the EPR schemes for every type of product. As I said before, 30 EPR schemes in France. It covers everything. Everything. I could give you examples, but it's very impressive.
I had a cold during that.
Clothes, furniture, batteries, leisure sport, packaging.
Good.
So many.
We're there. Thank you very much, both of you. Now my voice goes all of a sudden. Bye-bye. It's been a pleasure.